Hello and welcome. This is Down to Resound, and I'm your host, Carol Ann Osborne. On our first episode ever, we sat down with Dr. Linda Lister to discuss creativity, calm, and what it means to really resound. Thanks so much for listening. First, we're going to start things off with a little game, our rapid fire round. You'll just answer these questions as fast as you can. Number 1, what's your go-to vocal warm-up?
Humming on NG.
That's a good one. Next question, your favorite opera or musical?
Musical's easy. Sweeney Todd, every day, all day.
Oh, yeah.
Opera's so much harder. There's so many, but maybe Figaro. But yeah, probably Figaro.
Love it. Third question, one book you recommend to every singer?
So many great books. I grew up on, the old Richard Miller book, Structure of Singing.
Yeah, that's a lovely one. I also love his training soprano voices.
Yes,
and training all the voices.
You got it.
Good. You're answering these fast.
Okay, I was expecting something different. I didn't know it.
This is a fun, getting into it. Number 4, there's 7, by the way.
Okay.
Most surprising thing on your current playlist?
Most surprising thing. Charlie XCX.
I don't even know who that is.
Did I say it right?
Is that... Oh, wait. That was the, they had, the Neon Green album, and it was, one word. What was it? It was Bummer or something like that. I can't remember.
I just know the one song I like. Boom, clap, crash, clap.
Oh, cool. Okay, next question is, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Neither. I'm definitely not a morning person, although as I get older, you do wake up a little earlier, but I don't like to sing in the morning. I'm one of those singer types.
Okay, a non-vocal wellness practice you love?
Okay. Well, I won't say yoga because yoga technically would be chanting, but hiking.
Ooh, that's a good one. I also love to hike. Okay, and last one. One thing you wish more singers understood?
Just the whole body instrument concept.
Yeah. Wow, you have great answers. Thank you so much for coming on the show and welcome.
Thanks for reconnecting.
Yeah. I think the last time I saw you in person was about 10 years ago at Druid City, 16, and I bought your book, which I let a student borrow, of course, and never got it back. Definitely helped me get started in my own yoga practice. I have benefited from your work. You're an inspiration to a lot of people. So first, I thought we'd getting to know in case people don't know you. So can you tell us about your journey as a singer and an educator?
Sure. I started voice lessons when I was 15, which my teacher normally didn't take people that young. I was an exception. I think she just wanted to make sure I was building on good technique. And then I was really more into musical theater at the time. That was my dream. And then when I went to college, I discovered opera. My voice was maybe more tuned to that. People tell you don't fit this role, try that one. Eventually you fit all of them or you decide which. Anyway, I studied music at Vassar College, then went on to do my master's in voice at the Eastman School of Music. Very amazing place, very competitive, but inspiring. Got my first teaching job, adjunct at State University of New York, College at Fredonia. Fell in love with teaching. So while I was still performing, went back and got my doctorate at University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And been teaching and performing ever since. It's been the perfect combination. You always learn more about your own singing when you're teaching, trying to put yourself in the shoes of your students because no one's ever finished. Always reevaluating and reassessing as the world changes, as you change, as your voice changes and matures and just keeps finding a new path, hopefully, right? Never stuck in one place.
Always is morphing into something new. It's always a challenge, always something more creative you can do or try or discover.
There was a period where I actually got out of love with classical singing and I was singing jazz. And I eventually came back to it, but it was a great way for me to explore singing in those styles and teaching in those styles. It always makes you a more well-rounded pedagogue, knowing more repertoire and more ways students learn. Music is a language. People speak it in different ways.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people can resonate with that.
Good. Yeah.
I know I can. There's been times in my life where I wanted to give up or didn't think it was for me anymore. Changing focus can help you fall in love with what you originally were doing or find something new about that thing.
Yep.
My next question, what inspired you to write Yoga for Singers? I think that was published in 2011. Is that correct? So
14 years ago now. I was teaching it shorter and trying to find different ways that students could understand the concept of the whole body as being their instrument. I had been a dancer, was doing some yoga. I barely started doing yoga at the time. And I just, during warm-ups, kind of threw in a few poses or breathing exercises as an experiment and got a great response. As my own practice developed, I found ways that I could relate it to singing. And then it just cannonballed. Suddenly I was all obsessed with yoga, decided I wanted to do a book and had my students posing, doing the asanas. It's still part of what I do today. And it's funny, still, not everybody likes yoga. That's fine. Even if they hate yoga, if it helps them find Feldenkrais or Alexander or body mapping, it could be kickboxing. It can be whatever helps you really connect and ground yourself.
Getting introduced to that mind-body connection could relate to like a different character. Like Donna Anna is gonna like a different something than Elvira, she'd probably be kickboxing.
Yeah, I don't see Donna Elvira, meditating.
No.
Maybe she should, but I never thought of it that way. But that's a great way.
Yeah.
Next show I direct, ask them, what physical activity would your character most like to practice?
What's the role of the body in vocal training in your view? We know it's helpful, but why?
We talk about the importance of having, healthy technique. Hopefully people are still talking about that, right? I've been doing a lot of research recently about how there is science to, understanding the mind-body connection. How can you actually sing well if you can't breathe well? And you can't really breathe well if you can't stand well. Everything is so interconnected. Of course, the vocal folds. I'm always struck when I see videos of the larynx in action. It looks bizarre. It's all about how you're feeling it. If your sense of that is correct, do you have a good kinesthetic sense, or do you not know that, you're slumping or that you're lifting your shoulders when you breathe? So that's why, to me, that mind-body connection is important for any musician.
And I see so many opera companies today hiring kinesthetic, the name for it.
Kinesthesiologist, maybe?
Oh, yes, maybe. Yeah, kinesthesiologist.
Maybe,
they're including them as part of the team for young artist programs. They have the voice teacher, the coach, the director, and then now they're adding this fourth person. We've come a long way.
That's wonderful. Yes, absolutely.
Now that our listeners know you, how do you bring yoga and somatic awareness into your daily teaching? When is it appropriate?
It depends. Students are so individualized. I've been teaching now for, I don't want to say how many years, different generations, but it takes that affinity that a voice teacher has with their students to sense. Is this someone who talking about their breath will help them, or putting hands on their own body and feeling the breath mechanism, will that help them? Will images help them? Will looking at themselves in a mirror? You can relate these things to yoga, even though most yogis would say never use a mirror to build your own self-awareness, but I still think it's a helpful tool. I've only had one student who purposely came to me saying she wanted me to incorporate yoga into every single thing that we did. And wow, that was fun. It was intense. But just little bits that you think will be relevant. So if a person has, and sometimes you might even tell them it's yoga. You could say, stick out your tongue, stretch it towards your chin, and exhale like a lion. And that's lion pose or roar.
Right.
Like if you're working on staccati, that could be a yoga pranayama breathing technique, but you don't call it that. So
You can trick me. I'd be happy to be tricked.
Okay, there you go. You drank the Kool-Aid already. That's the one thing I so much love about yoga, that it's a practice that's designed for each person. Yogi's choice. Not to speak ill of the ballet world, because I adored ballet, and at one point that was my dream to be a ballerina. But it's very strict. Either you fit strictures or you don't. It's unforgiving. I've had amazing voice teachers my whole life. There's certain things that you carry, the practice they gave you, exercises, approaches, and there's some you leave, and sometimes you mold it and put it together and it's something new. It's not prepackaged. It's organic. It's growing. It's developing. That's it,
They might have some apprehension or even some reactions to certain exercises. Have you ever experienced that with any students, and how did you mitigate some of those challenges?
I mean, what voice teacher hasn't had someone cry in a voice lesson,
Yes, it's part therapy. It definitely felt like that with the good ones.
Yeah. I think that's part of, since it's your body, it's inherently personal. You can't choose the body you're born into, or the vocal folds you get, or the lung size. It is so much harder to be growing up in the world today. There are wonderful things. I mean, like platforms like this and podcasts and being able to reach different people. That's the great part. Watching reels of all these animals about, in danger, like that kind of stress, like knowing everything that's going on in the world, it's trauma inducing. Absolutely. When I'm with a student, I try to focusing on what their needs are and their progression, just try to give them that moment where nothing else is interfering. It's sort of a larger scale version of what the monkey mind or the negative inner monologue. That's not helpful in modern day life. We're not in danger now sitting in our houses on our laptops. Knowing all that's going on in the world, it's hard just to focus. Really, with my students, I'm not answering the phone or looking at the computer, and I try to get them to notice when they're on their iPad with their music, all these notifications. So the other thing I love in a yoga class, in my body and aware of how I'm feeling today, whether it's good or bad. Trauma-informed pedagogy is a developing field right now. One of my new collaborators, that's her field of specialty.
Yes, Elisa Monti. Am I saying that right?
Elisa Monti. She's Italian.
I love it.
Well, if it can help one person, then it's worth it. We never used that terminology when I was growing up. Assume extra care with people because you just never know. And especially as I've learned more about the world, you come out of your own little bubble and you realize, wow, there is a lot to process. You have to be vulnerable in that voice lesson if you're really going to, connect to your body and then eventually connect to an audience. And that takes a lot of courage to be that vulnerable.
Yes. Trust is very hard to find these days. My other question here, how has your own relationship with your voice, how has that changed over time?
So my voice in some ways hasn't changed in that my Fach has not changed. I do notice, which is pretty typical from the research that I've done, as you go through menopause, the transitions of your voice become harder, like especially the lower transition. I never used to have any problem with my lower prima passaggio. I was diagnosed as hypothyroid. Sometimes I was getting a little, not raspy, but where I could feel that the adduction didn't have clean, clear adduction of the cords. I wondered about thyroid, throat chakra, what's going on there? Is there some connection? But some people, and their voices change. And that's the same way with the entirety of the body as you get older. Yeah, like in a yoga practice, there's certain postures I can still do, but maybe I just choose not to do them because maybe it's just I'm not going to feel great afterwards. And that's the kinesthetic awareness that singers need, or just any human being.
I'm sure even with the struggle and the challenge, your voice is still just as beautiful. I can't imagine it having a big impact on our listening. I never knew that about menopause. You hear about your menstruation and the thickening of the folds and the sloughing of the mucosal membrane, plus the cramping of the abdominals and how there's no release at all.
I'm glad that people are now studying and acknowledging that these things affect you and your voice.
Yeah, they don't call it getting choked up for nothing, I guess. What do you hope for your students to carry with them once they move on? What do you hope that they really take with them?
Well, I hope overall that they continue to take joy in their singing, because I've had a couple of students who very ambitious, hardworking students, as they were trying to progress to the next level, feeling fear of rejection, these normal things that we all go through as artists in general. Remembering, why are you doing this? Because you love to sing, right? That you're a finished product. That's something I wish I told myself at that age, to not panic, enjoy the journey, and know, yes, it's going to be some bumps, but remember, you love to sing. I didn't have children, but I assume this is what parents want for their children, that they are self-sustaining and can stand on their own and feel confident. Because as you said, even if it means not trying, taking a break, just don't give up before you even try.
It might be your favorite toy for a while, but you can play with your other ones too. I do believe that singing is a gift and that music is a gift. Art in general is a gift, whichever art form you choose to play with. But yeah, you have to have a life as well.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. Find something that gives you joy in a different way.
Right.
And escape. What I've noticed that Gen Z in particular is better at that than my generation was. They're trying to prioritize work-life balance and progress.
Speaking of resiliency, Gen Z, I thought the millennials were a resilient generation. That generation, they can go through anything. They're strong. I'd love to talk about your column. I'm so excited to read your new articles. I've read some of your other articles that have been featured in the journal in the past on like Straussian sopranos. You're such a lovely writer, and you are sharing this role with Elisa Monti. Congratulations on your new editorialship. I'd love to hear what most excites you about being that new column editor.
I had submitted an article to the Journal of Singing, anonymous, and you wait 9 months to hear something. My article was finally accepted, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like closest thing I know to giving birth. Now that I'm an associate editor and co-managing this column, I don't have to go through that 9-month process anymore, which is nice. And you still work closely with the editor. I have great respect for the Journal of Singing. I'm really excited that I have Dr. Monti, Elisa, to mentor me through. That's great, so that there's sort of a diversity of thought. She is a psychologist. Her field of specialty is trauma, the voice and trauma, and so this trauma-informed view of somatics. And her most recent column that's coming out in the next issue is about the stigma of voice injury. I'm curious to see how that article is received, and if more people are willing to talk about that. Don't you agree that people don't want to talk about it?
Not just in singers. I have some family members that have some issues. And if you can't speak, how do you communicate? Not everybody knows ASL. I couldn't even imagine.
I had a student who admitted to me that she had gone through a vocal hemorrhage, which she thought would be career ending. It wasn't through a fault of bad technique or anything. Sometimes people trip walking down the street. That's not because they had bad walking technique. So the assumption that you did something wrong to bring on your vocal injury used to be what you would hear whispered back when I was a student. I've been working on my first contribution to the column, which is going to be mindful breathing for music performance anxiety, doing a sort of a review of all these extensive scientific studies. The 21st century has opened up studies on yoga breathing and how it affects heart rate variability, blood pressure, stress hormones. I've never devoured scientific studies and articles before. That makes me feel alive and young and excited to talk to other people about it and hopefully help other people understand these things.
That's what I always start with my students. After we get to feeling comfortable, we go straight to the breath. We do box breathing. We talk about, like you said, heart rate. Climate has a lot to do with it too. If you are in a cold weather environment versus a warm weather environment, I'm so excited. I can't wait to read it. And Dr. Monti's too. I think that we could all use a little more education around this subject, and we are very lucky to have wonderful people heading it up. I'm thrilled, very excited.
Well, yeah, it's great to have someone like her, your columnist, to bounce ideas off of. And I read what she was writing, and I'm going to share what I'm writing. I'm nervous about that, but again, that's part of the process.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think performance anxiety, everybody struggles with it. Last night, I had an audition for Carousel, and I know that show so well. And it was a very relaxed audition. It was mostly a group audition. I still had some performance anxiety. I think the medicine for performance anxiety comes from exposure therapy. Just do it over and over and over, and getting out there in front of people, sharing, even though that fight or freeze is like running hot, doing it anyway really helps ease that.
I agree. Exposure therapy, just so that it feels like a more normal, more like a ritual. Like you're not nervous when you're brushing your teeth, right? You do it hopefully twice a day,
right?
Maybe 3 times. Some of the studies I've been reading, one called vase or vase breathing. The studies reveal that you can't just do it for 15 minutes. It has to be a regular practice. I'm nervous this one time. I'll try this one thing. It doesn't work because the body needs to be trained.
Mm-hmm. When you're not using it, you're losing it. Very cool. I was so excited for your column. This first column is just like the first layer of the cake. We're going to get so many more. We're so excited. Considering the column's legacy, like under the leaders like Helding and Maxfield, what does this editorial role mean for you, and how might the column evolve under your stewardship? What are you going to add? It was once considered a bit radical, this column. Pedagogues were like, we don't know about this mindfulness stuff. So bringing somatics and cognitive science into the field that often clings to tradition. Do you think that voice pedagogy is ready for this next wave of change, and what still holds us back?
Yeah, I'm very aware of the lineage. In working on this first column, I'm mentioning Lynn Helding and just pay homage to her because she started the column. To me, it doesn't seem that radical, but when I see the voice pedagogy world evolving and the voice science just blossoming, I'm excited that branch has just forged a new path. And she was trying to do it in a different way. My cohort comes from a totally different background than I do. I've never co-written an article with someone, especially someone from such a different background. I think what is radical, today is mundane tomorrow in a way, if you think about it. So not mundane, maybe that's the wrong word, but just, like regular or expected. It's the long traditions. I think in some ways it's an analogous, the tradition of things passed down by teacher. There was a period where they thought spectral analysis was going to be used in voice studios everywhere. What does the ear hear? Because I remember my teacher telling me, one day you'll be able to hear on a recording whether someone's tongue is tense in the front or the back. And I thought, well, how could I hear that without seeing them? But now I know what she meant. If mindful voice was the radical, there's got to be something more radical next, because it's kind of middle of the road right now, right?
I would say it's something people are wanting. For sure. And that's what's really smart, to have both editors. With the spectrograph analysis, it's helpful. I definitely use it. But as a teacher, you should be able to hear those things. There's a book on that, hearing, singing, and how teaches teachers about how to listen for certain things and how spectrograph analysis can help and maybe how it doesn't. I haven't finished reading it. Can't devour them all fast enough. We know that you're going to bring insight and exercises and practices to try, and you're going to get us all to think and do it in such a beautiful way. We're very lucky to get to read what you're going to be writing. So what transformative effects have you observed in singers or in colleagues? Because I'm sure you have observed some wonderful things. The other side of that question is, for those people, those teachers that are resistant to those approaches, how do we respond to them? How do we get them on board?
I think getting people on board with new things is never easy. Another one of my platforms advocating for programming music by female composers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on my soapbox about that a lot. I don't do that to get my own work produced. It's really just to be an advocate. People will say, oh, that's wonderful that you do that. And then I notice their students are singing all the same repertoire they've been programming for how many years. And people do what is familiar. I understand that. There is a pedagogical purpose for a lot of repertoire choices. I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's similar when it comes to people approaching new ways to teach breathing. We had someone teaching a master class, and one of my students asked me a question that I don't understand that. What does that mean? I was carefully going to construct an answer, and her friend said, that's old school. And I get it. I mentioned Richard Miller, an old book. You can take your old favorites, couple it with something new, and maybe it won't work. I think that's why people who have been teaching a long time maybe are afraid, because if they know what works, and maybe if they try something new, it won't work. Not everything works all the time anyway, because students are individuals. They are not robots.
The studio, it's an interesting place. Some days it is so playful. Other times it's like tackling something. And it's an interesting space, how it morphs. And being a voice teacher is hard. Being a voice student is hard.
I've discovered if I'm trying something and it doesn't work, I'm no longer afraid to just, let's try something different. I remember when I first started teaching, I was afraid that would make it seem like I didn't know what I was doing, or I had no method or no plan, which I always did. I'm better at reading the room now. I'm not going to worry about getting some bad evaluation. Oh, this is not working. I'm not going to spend an hour trying to do this that is not working for you. The reason I started doing yoga, I don't think was related to singing. After I did eventually realize it was helping me, I would get, the fight or flight response. The idea really clicked, and it was part of, because in yoga, sometimes they have to do this thing called a bandha where you lock your rib cage. It was weird. There's something that was what you really shouldn't do for singing, kind of clicked with me of like what I should do for singing. Is that aversion therapy? Trying something, almost anything, can be beneficial as long as it's safe. Now I do that often with the students I'd be like, okay, close your rib cage. This is bad. No. Okay. So that's what your body doesn't, optimally want to experience. And now let's open the intercostals. It wouldn't work with everybody, but it clicks with certain students and definitely worked for me. I've heard several singers who still talk about their yoga practice. Joyce DiDonato, so there's a master class of her having a student do I can't remember what piece, maybe it was Handel, doing Warrior Two pose, one of those easy poses that usually works, and people feel empowered and their rib cage is open and they're grounded. Those moments I definitely enjoy. This thing is singers that trying to control as much as we can the mechanism of breath so that we can exhale on a pitch under whatever parameters the composer has designed for us.
I love how simple your solution was to do it the opposite way, the closing of the rib cage. I feel like that speaks a lot to your teaching style. How do you approach helping singers access emotional depth and also vocal authenticity? The technique might be there, but then the storytelling element is missing, or the storytelling is really strong, but how do we incorporate some techniques there?
First, to talk about authenticity, I demonstrate much less than I ever used to in my teaching. Even though I teach more often these days, I still try not to demonstrate. There's always a time and place for it, but I want them to have their own concept of their voice that's not trying to imitate or model per se. I have a particular student, as you bring your question up about finding that balance. She's always in it. Everyone else is, even if they're great, they're still at 80% for what she is. Like she's like 110. And there was this high note, she wanted to hold it for like 10 beats or something, this dramatic moment. Oh. And she did it. And she's one of those people who wants to do it the same every time, who doesn't like reliability. But I felt that it was perhaps not showing as much of what she wanted. It was past the point of optimal vocal health, in my opinion. Having that conversation, saying, well, as a director, you don't need, I love the duration, but you've made your point at this moment. Always look after your vocal health, and you never want to leave it. That's an expression from football, is it? I don't know sports, but leave it all. You don't want to leave it all on the field. Is that football? I can remember being in several productions where it was in a very emotional moment for my character, and I wanted to cry, but then the way I cry normally is an ugly cry, like where the throat gets thick and you can't talk. So that doesn't really work for lyrical singing, right? If it's a very emotive version of Les Miserables, like Anne Hathaway in the movie of, I dreamed a dream, that's fine. But that doesn't work for most of us in a live theater situation.
That is such a fine line. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but voice teachers are often expected to be part therapist, part technician, part cheerleader, right? So where do you draw the line? What's too much or not enough when it comes to emotional work in the studio? We talked about trauma-informed pedagogy earlier. There are lots of emotions. Singing is very personal, especially for the younger singer. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, voice teachers are not therapists, psychologists. At the same time, you are a mentor. If they need another resource, and if you're at a university, there's usually, a counseling center. We can call it a day. You can, or we can sit here and chat if that will help. And often I just try to relate, show empathy. I would never say, well, this is what you have to do. If they ask me for advice, I will say, well, this is one thing you could do. But talk to your parents, your friends, your counselor. In my experience, it usually has nothing to do with anything going on in the lesson. I remember once, this is a story I'll share. This is the kind of thing I would share with my students. I was singing Befreit, which is a very difficult Strauss song, with a really long sharp in the soprano key. And then it resolves to a G natural. And it's about like letting go. My boyfriend and I just broken up, or about to break up or something at the time. And it's just the whole all of a sudden hit me that, and then I couldn't get through it. And I started crying in the middle of the note in some master class. I just remember how kind the coach was. I want to be as kind as he was, and talked me off the cliff. And he says, yes, you are totally connected to the song. You know what it's about.
I once did a production of Bohème. I was singing Musetta, and Mimi was dying at the end. I was supposed to go to my hands on the wall, and I was like, thank God the orchestra's playing. I don't have to sing anymore, because this is just and I was like, thank God I don't have to face the audience. I can just hang on to this wall.
And some students, it seems good. Nothing's bad. They know the meaning. They're doing it. It's generally correct, but there's something missing. And then you chat about it afterwards, and then they fall apart because it was all like a mask, and it didn't touch you because they were holding that last bit. So that's what people are learning, to sort of find that line. And that's even something you have to find in everyday life.
Offering that support and that experience, right? Offering your personal experience, but also keeping it clean, Yeah,
no, because you never want a student to become dependent upon your feedback in terms of life or death or their emotional well-being. You should just be a wonderful support in addition to their healthy life. And
exactly. That's beautiful. So you've done it all. You've been a performer. You've been a librettist, a composer, an author. What's one moment you were underestimated, or one risk you took that paid off big time?
I've often been underestimated. Not that I'm this wonderful, discovered thing, but because I was kind of an introvert. I used to get parts when the first choice backed out or couldn't do it or got sick. The biggest risk I took, I gave up a tenure track job because things were not going well at that school. That was scary. I didn't know what I was going to do. But that was the year I wrote the book, which I don't think I could have done if I was directing shows, just being honest. Like I had to have that 9 months to give birth to the book. I applied for this job at UNLV and gave up that job in the middle of the recession to come out here to Las Vegas. I don't know what it would be like. And there was a pay cut. And I thought, wow, did I make a bad choice? But no, it all worked out.
Yeah.
And I got to, direct and teach voice and keep up the yoga and do all these things. I have a former student who just wrote to me yesterday, Facebook Messenger, asking like, what do I do? I have these jobs. Which one should I take? So you got to go with your gut. It may not seem like the right choice, but that risk led me to where I am today. So I made the right choice. I'm happy with how it all turned out.
That's wonderful. Let's see. So your teaching materials and your articles that I've read and seen have consistently prioritized breath cues, simple interventions, I guess, that singers can apply for grounded singing and being confident in your artistic expression. Would you be willing to share one specific breath cue or maybe a somatic prep or a vocal exercise that could help listeners feel more embodied and guided in their voice work?
In terms of getting out of my head and into my body, I often do a yoga pose, just doing sort of an inversion, either lying on the ground with your legs up the wall, or you could do a standing forward bend, maybe clasping the elbows, just for a reset, especially if people are running late to rehearsal or a lesson and all flustered, or something I like backstage when I'm feeling nervous, just to kind of reset, be there, lip trills, voiced or unvoiced, and then rolling up and trying to stack the spine, the vertebrae. Whenever I am feeling nervous or just not in my body, I say, okay, every breath is a new breath. In yoga, every moment can be a reset. For me, breathing exercises on their own don't help so much. For some people, they are great, like a simple, you're talking about box breathing. Or I was just reading in research for this article, bee breath. It's a yogic breath where you're humming like a bee, feeling the vibration. And they actually have you, I have my earbuds in, but you're supposed to touch the trachea or trachea cartilage, I don't know how you say it, and maybe cover your eyes while you're doing, buzzing or humming.
That's amazing. What's a vocal wellness trend you think is overrated, or a secret weapon tool you swear by that's not widely adopted yet?
What's overrated? This is going to sound bad. The trend I'm not into, people having to teach and show their voice lessons, like if they're influencer. I admire that they can do that. As for me, I personally would not want my voice lessons, even no matter how amazing I sounded. If people want to do that, that's great. I personally think that's overrated just because it seems like it's seeking out affirmation for somebody. I'm not judging it. I would want to have that safe space that I'm not worried about, it looking good or sounding good. I just want the student to have that experience. Now, what was the other? Was a trick? What was that?
Secret weapon tool.
I mean, I don't know if it's widely adopted. I'm all about having your own entry mantra. You know what mantras are? Those sort of positive affirmations. I tell my students to have their own, either like hear entry music, like music in your head when you're entering. Maybe you're hearing a Beyonce song, like I rule, or your mantra, whatever it could be, like I got this, or just sort of like, again, part of that programming. Because that's something I've noticed with a lot of, especially undergraduate students, they come out for their audition or their jury or whatever, and it's just like, oh my God. One of the best compliments I got from someone was like, you the way you walked out, I knew it was going to be great. And I was thinking, I was really nervous for that. I was really nervous for that performance, but they didn't know it because I was running my playback. And maybe you listen to the song before you walk out.
One of the things that I would naturally want to say is, what if they hate it? Or what if they don't like it? I've prepared as much as I can. I'm ready. But what if they don't like it? That's the last thing that I can't control. So yeah, I would always just go on, they're going to love it. 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 And after so many times, you believe it.
And they don't have to tell you their song. I'm always like, you don't have to tell me. Like, don't tell me.
What's your theme song?
Yeah, what's your theme song?
Up here. Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. This was an absolute delight. I had so much fun. And you're so special. And I know we have so many things to look forward to with your co-column. And I'm sure you'll have more projects and things as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or you wanted to plug things?
My first solo column for Mindful Voice will be published in January, so it'll be starting the new year fresh. I do have an article coming out in September, and it is about Franz, Schubert, and Taylor Swift, so don't miss that. The correlations. I know you're wondering how and why, but you read the article and you'll understand. I love your face.
I'm thrilled. Absolutely excited. I'm gonna have to think on this. I'm gonna make some predictions.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
gonna make some predictions. Tuck them away.
So September in the journal singing.
You got it. Thank you so much for being here today.